here, and we're going to talk about diffusion. This happens in liquids and in gases, and it's where those particles can move around more freely. Diffusion happens. So let's get into it. So yeah, aftershave or perfume, depending on your gender or your preference. Okay, so every time you've smelt someone's perfume or aftershave, you've been experiencing diffusion. So let's travel on and see what we can find out more. So looking at the little picture there, starts out in one corner and spreads out. That's what diffusion's happening. It's where it starts out concentrated in one place and spreads out till it's shared equally throughout the space that it's in. If it's a room, however, if it's out in the open atmosphere, it may take a bit longer to diffuse completely. I'm not sure if this is actually diffusion or condensation dissipating from the chimney, but we can see that it's starting out concentrated over here. Where it comes out of the chimney, it's quite concentrated, but at the other end here it's quite dissipated and it's sort of spreading out as it comes out. So diffusion basically starts out concentrated and then spreads out more evenly. Let's look at that some more. So diffusion in water. Drop your lump of sugar in and the sugar starts to dissolve, and eventually the sugar molecules go from being in a concentrated lump in the corner of in this case the beaker, but it could be a cup of tea, to being slowly, they're a bit more, still reasonably concentrated here, but they are spreading out, and eventually you get to the place here where they're evenly spread everywhere. They've diffused throughout the whole of the cup of tea, or in this case the beaker. So what exactly is diffusion? So here's this fancy definition. Movement of molecules or ions or atoms or stuff from where it's at a high concentration to where it's at a low concentration till they spread out evenly. So as in the sugar molecule, they go from where it's all clumped together and they spread out till it's all even. They go from where it's at a high concentration to a lower concentration. So here's a diagram showing that. If we have a wall dividing two samples, and then we remove the wall, the purple will diffuse this way, so because it's a lower concentration at this end. The blue will diffuse this way because it's a lower concentration at this end, until here where the both sort of are all evenly spread out throughout the whole of the container. So it's going from a high concentration to a low concentration. And as you can see here in the middle diagram, diffusion is happening in both directions. It doesn't just involve one thing, it can happen in both directions. So some examples of that. So this is the alveoli. That's a fancy name for the little sacs at the end of your lungs, and we've got oxygen diffusing into your blood and carbon dioxide diffusing out of it. So the blue arrows carbon dioxide coming out of your blood, red arrows oxygen going into your blood. That's diffusion happening inside you. Inside your gut, diffusion happens as well. We've got down here, this here represents the gut wall, and we've got things that are top part, the sort of purpley pink part of this diagram, all up here. This is all stuff inside your gut, inside what we call the gut lumen, and it's all diffusing across into this side here, which is your bloodstream. So how do we make it go faster? And as it says there, rate of diffusion is proportional to the concentration gradient. And what does that mean? So the greater the difference in concentration in two places, the faster it will go. So I can get it really concentrated in one place, really concentrated here, and not concentrated here. I'll get a gradient and it will flow between the two. So here's a little graph showing that. Really high concentration up here, really low down here. I've got a gradient and it's going to go down the concentration gradient. The steeper I can get that, the faster it will go. That's what's been happening in this diagram here. We'll come back to this one. High concentration here of this. The purple is high in this end, but it's low over here. The blue is high over here, but low over here. So purple moves that way, blue moves that way. So, obviously, small things go quicker than large things. They can get through the small gaps, small holes, and wriggle through things a bit easier. And goes through thin membrane. So it's got to go through a membrane. The thinner it is, the easier and the quicker it's going to happen. It's back to the lungs, and we've got this really thin membrane. Okay, this membrane here, the lung membrane, and where it joins into the blood vessel, that is amazingly thin. And these capillaries here are so small that single blood cells have got to squeeze through at a time. They're so thin. So making it really short distance for it to go. And bigger the surface area, the more diffusion we can get happening. So in leaves, we've got to get gases into the leaves, in through the stoma, and then up through the leaves, up into here to all these little chloroplasts, so photosynthesis can happen. And the bigger the surface area, the easier that's going to happen. And if you look at trees, they're going to have quite a few big leaves or thousands of small leaves, and all those leaves add up together to a really large surface area. So, summarising all that, the steeper the gradient, so the bigger the difference between the high concentration, low concentration, the steeper that gradient slope, the faster it will happen. Particle size, so smaller ones go faster than bigger particles. Bigger the surface area, we get more diffusion. Think of inside your lungs, inside your gut, leaves on trees. The shorter the distance, the quicker it can happen. Okay, so thin membranes or getting it to diffuse real close to where you want it to end up. And temperature too. Temperature will make it go faster. Okay, so diffusion again, movement from a place where it's high concentration to a place where it's a low concentration until it's all evenly spread out. That's diffusion. Okay, if you need to watch that again to understand it better, go for it, but I hope that all helped.